So in this video we're going to add pause to our game. So in the original, I hit pause. What it does is it suspends all movement, it plays a sound clip, and I unpause, he does his teleport animation, and everything resumes. And so that's the original. So let's go to mine and play it. So what I've done is I've typed pause to the P key. See, bomb suspended, and unlike the original, I put paused on screen. You don't have to do that. I just want to have it show something that we're paused. Let's get over here. I'm just going to run through this real quick so we can see, do pausing here and there. Get ahead of this guy. And what I also did is, when you're in a transition, you're not able to pause. And I'm going to stop it right there. And there are other points in the game where you're not going to want it to be able to pause either. And we're going to go over those in this version. So we'll be back in a sec, and we're going to load the previous project and do the new code. Okay, we're back. So we have the previous project open. If you have not been following along, there's a link in the description to my GitHub that has all the projects for each one of these videos I've been putting out. But if you have been following along, open up your project. Last one should have been Sniper Joe. And in this one, there are no new assets. We're going to make use of an audio clip that we've already had since the beginning. It's the number 2 clip in our sounds folder under audio, and it's the pause menu. So let's play it. So that's what's going to happen. That's going to be played when we pause our game. So we're going to make changes to a bunch of files. Now, doing the pause, it's really preference, and there are always different ways that you can accomplish the same goal when you're coding. So what we're going to do for ours, because there are no independent background animations or anything that's playing, it basically just suspends everything in the game, just like in the original. We're going to make use of a feature in Unity called Timescale. And by setting Timescale to 0, basically it suspends pretty much everything. And you can read all about it here. And so we're going to make use of this in ours. So we're going to be setting Timescale to 0, and that will basically suspend everything. And when we want to unpause, we'll put it back to 1 to play it basically in real time. So you can read all about this. There are certain things like coroutines that may be affected. Other things like maybe invoke. I'm not sure, I haven't actually tried it, but if it's using time, then it probably will be suspended as well. So we're going to go over into Meld here. There's a bunch of changes in all these files, but the first one we're going to start with is the asset palette, and we're going to be bringing in that new audio clip. So I'm just going to bring that over, save that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to here. And let's get this over with first. And we're going to go to our prefabs and then our game manager. So now we should have a pause menu clip option here. And we're going to add in that audio clip, number 2. Drag that right there. Save that. Go back, and then we're going to go and change some more files here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to change Game Manager, and we're going to skip that. We are going to use these variables I use for pausing the game. So a couple of bools here. One says is game pause, another one can we pause the game, if we're in a camera transition, and saving the previous time scale. So we're going to bring those over. And then down here, I'm going to tie pressing the P key on the keyboard, P for pause, and it's going to be calling this function here called pause game. That's what's going to put it in motion, so we're going to bring that over. Now I also have a function that's going to be down a little bit further called allow game pause, and this is basically going to be where we're going to allow, not every point in the game you're going to want to let the person be able to pause your game. In camera transitions, for example, I don't want the game to be paused. I want the transition to play all the way through before you're allowed to pause the game. And I believe I haven't tested, I think I tried it, I can't remember exactly, but I think when you're in a camera transition in the original, it doesn't, you can't pause it then either. So we're going to bring that over to our starting the title screen, starting the intro scene. We don't want to pause in either of those because those basically take the any key, and so it kind of skips what's going on. Now down here, ignore that. We don't want to be able to pause the game when the main scene is very first starting, when it's playing the ready. But when the ready is done, we want to be able to pause the game. And ignore that. Now this right here is the chunk that makes this all work. Let's go in here. So I have a public bool here, is game paused, which can be called from anywhere. So it's going to basically pass back this flag whether the game is paused or it's not paused. So you can see if you react depending if it is or not. Here's that allow game pause, and this is going to be a flag saying, yeah, you can pause it, or no, we don't want it to be able to get paused. And then we have this public bool, public void here called pause game. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if we're allowed to pause the game, and if it's not already paused, we're going to set is game paused to true. We're going to capture the current time scale and just save it in that variable. And then we're going to set our time scale to 0. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pause the music. We're going to play that menu clip, that audio. And then for my game, you can ignore this part if you don't want to do this. But for here, we're going to save the previous message, and then we're going to set the on-screen message to the word paused. So it shows that we're paused. The original doesn't do that. I want to do that. And then if it is, if the game is paused, then we want to obviously have the ability to undo that. So we'll set the false, restore the time scale, start playing the music again, and then in the original we basically do the teleport, and I made a change to the teleport because in the original teleport he's always descending. Well, maybe we just want to play the animation clip, so that's what this change is going to be. We'll get to that when we get over to the player controller. And then we're going to restore the previous message. More than likely it'll probably be nothing. And then we have some other stuff down here at the end, but we're going to get to those after. I'm just going to copy this, drop that there, save that. So we're going to bring over those. And then ignore all this. This has to do with freezing items, and we're going to get to that after. So you can use Timescale, or I basically beefed up all the freeze item, where you can freeze the game objects, like things that if they're flying in the air, the explosions, weapons, etc. So if you don't want to use Timescale, then that would be the alternative. But we also use these alternatives in camera transitions, which we'll get to. And then down here is where the changes for the teleport. So we're going to take this, we're going to overwrite that, this there, and then this. We'll leave this alone for right now. And that should be it for the chain up. Another one. We also don't want the game to be able to be paused when we're doing our player defeated. We want the animation to play out, the scene to restart. So we're going to bring that over. And the rest of this, that's it. So those are the changes for right there. Save that. And then we need to make changes in our player controller. So ignore that. This, we can ignore that too for right now. Now down here, what we're going to do is, if the game is paused, we don't want it to run through any of this, because there are certain cases where the animations don't end up being right and everything, so we don't want this stuff to be executed if we're being paused, if we're in pause. So we're gonna just take these two stuff here, that over, back that up. Bring this over. here. This is actually going to come out. Keep that, because that's going to bring that over. So save that. So this is a change. However, for this for right now, we're going to get rid of that because we don't have the camera transition stuff yet. So we're just going to save that like so. And then the bullets, whatever, we'll get rid of that later. Now this, however, we do need to change this because our P key is going to basically be in the game manager. So we're just going to use J instead in case we want to freeze the player. And we're going to ignore that for right now. And down here, we're going to update our teleport. So in our switch button, we're going to alter that. And then down here, we're going to ignore that for right now. And then our teleport. So let's send that over. And then we're going to send that over. So the change in our teleport is we're going to have this bool as a function parameter called descend. And we're going to default it to true because by default, like we don't want to go and change everything everywhere, but by default the teleport should have the teleport speed applied. So he's coming down in the scene. So if you say false, down here we're not going to do that. We're going to skip to descending. We're not going to, let me backtrack. If we do have this to true, then we're going to do the same thing we were doing before, set the animation speed to 0. We're going to set our state to descending, and we're going to apply the velocity so he jets down. But up here above, we set it to landed, and it'll get overridden if we do our descending. And then we're going to set our rigid body velocity here on the Y to whatever it currently is, and we're going to set the X on to 0. So if we set descend to true, we're going to have the speed going down. If we set it to false, we basically are skipping the descending part and we're just playing really the teleport animation. So let's save that. And we're going to go back over to the game. So assuming I didn't miss anything, if we bring this back over, we're going to try it out. So now our P key should allow us to pause the game. And there it is. So I'm going to pound on the left, pound on the right, up, down, nothing. Nothing is happening. Press P again. So timescale is 0 right now. There. So let's get past this real quick. There's Sniper Joe. So what I'm going to do is I want this guy to follow me. So this is where the other free stuff is going to come into play. So come and get me, come and get me. Now I'm stuck, but he's not. He's not frozen, so he wasn't affected by the camera transition. So that's the other part that we're going to bring in now. So let's go back to the beginning. So we're going to ignore the prefab, ignore the main scene. Now, bomb. So there are a lot of changes that I had to make it so that everything has a freeze option. You can freeze bombs, you can freeze the magnet beam, you can freeze the items, like if a bonus ball gets dropped, if you freeze it, then the timer on it for it to disappear will not function. It'll basically stay infinitely there until you unpause or unfreeze it. So part of that is also on destroying the explode effect. So this destroy is going to be sorry, I had a brain fart. Anyway, it'll play out whether you freeze the item or not. So we need to compensate for that by giving it a destroy delay. So that destroy delay is basically going to play in the update loop, and then we have the ability to not count down or not decrement fix our delta time anymore, so it'll stay on the screen. So we're going to bring that over, and we have it on. So we're going to do that on these explosions and bomb bombs. So that's change 1. The next one, enemy controller. To freeze we're going to add on this vector 2 freeze velocity. We're going to bring that over. And same thing here with the explosions. We're not going to use the destroy anymore. We're going to use a destroy delay, and they're going to count down within the updates. And then we're going to bring this over for freeze velocity and restore it. So when you freeze an enemy, they're going to freeze their velocity on the screen so they don't move. And then down here in the main scene, oh, here's another part. Forgot that. Anyway, game manager. So when we highlight our animation sequences, like when we get to the in-game cutscenes or whatever, we don't want the pause to work there either. So that should have been in the part of the other one, but that's okay. So that's part of it here. Also, I have this function that we're going to be adding over in the game manager called freeze everything. Well, we're basically freeze everything and just called one function. And then when we're over in the animation sequence, we don't want it, we're just going to set it to invincible just in case. There shouldn't be anything that nails us when we're there, but who knows. And then this is the undo part. And here we go when we're in the checkpoint, which means we don't want that to be paused there. We don't want to pause it when the boss battle starts, when they're playing out their animations, or actually when it's over. Yeah, so we want to be able to pause when it's over, but not before that. And the last one here, we don't want to be able to pause the game when we collect the weapon parts, so we want to play the score add up and all that. Score tally. So save that. And let's close these things out. The bomb script has changes too, so we're going to be able to freeze the bomb on the screen. So we have these variables here to freeze the bomb, freeze its velocity, and capture its current constraints for the rigid body. So we're going to throw that over there. And then we're going to check and see if freeze bomb is true, then we're going to kick ourselves out of the update loop so they can stay frozen. Here's the same thing with the explosion. So don't use the destroy, which won't be affected by time. We want to be able to control when it, so if we freeze ourselves, we can control when the explosion goes away. And then our function here is this freeze bomb, like our other freezes. And then the bullet script, and I renamed this to timer, so it's consistent with the other stuff. And then we're going to bring that over and get rid of this. And modify this so if there is a delay that we want to be able to run this. If it's not, then we shouldn't be. So we're going to update that. And then the rename, and now they're the same. Next one's the magnet beam, so we want to be able to freeze the beam on the screen. Give it a timer. And down here in the update, we want this to be able to be executed so we don't have the return at the beginning like a lot of the other ones. So we have it down here with the destroy delay. And if we freeze beam variable here, then we'll have a countdown. And then these changes for the lock beam, and then the freeze beam. So bring all that over. So now they're the same. Save that. And then the camera transition. So in the camera transition here, this is on the post delay. So unfreeze, we should probably start down here. So this is when you enter the trigger. So when you enter the trigger, we want to freeze everything. So everything, when we get to that, being weapons, enemies, the items, and explosions. Those are the everythings. I kept the player out of that so you can freeze everything, but maybe leave the player unfrozen. So I kept the player separate from this freeze everything function. So we're going to send that over, and then we're going to make use of this in-camera transition thing, and then allow the game pause. We don't want the game to be paused when we're entering into a transition. So we're going to send that over. And then this is basically when we're getting out of the transition. So then we're going to bring everything back into motion and allow the game to be paused again. So we'll save that. And the explosion script. So the explosion script actually has a lot of changes to it because it was basically just an explosion, but now it's got a lot more brain to it. So we need to basically get a hold of our animator and the sprite, and then our timers and our boolean for the freeze or no freeze. We have to add an awake, start, and update, and then a destroy delay, and then a freeze explosion. And those are the changes for that. Then we'll come to the game manager last. Let's go to the item script. So in the item script, we need a timer and then all the variables that we need to be able to freeze an item. So there's that. Then we're going to come over here, we're going to add in the update. And then this is a little bit different because we basically call the destroy, which we won't be able to do anything. We can't control ourselves after that, so we're going to change that up to just set the timer. And then we're going to have the ability to freeze the item or unfreeze it. And then save that. And then let's do the game manager, and we'll do the player last. Okay, so game object and a lot of the functions I had, I'm always capturing the player, so I'm just going to do that the one time. Should have did that a long time ago, so we're going to put that in there. And then in the start main scene, we're going to be looking for the player, so we're going to drop that in there. And then we're going to get rid of this, so we don't need that. These are all going to be deleted, except for this. So now we're going to bring in camera transition and set in-camera transition, bring those over. And then we don't care, it's not freeze bullets. We're going to drop in freeze explosions. This actually expands out, so this actually gets inserted. All this, so this basically, there's freeze explosions, freeze items, freeze enemies, and freeze weapons. So these are all freezes, and then what we have down here is our freeze everything. So we're going to drop in freeze everything. So this basically just calls all those 4 previous functions. So we can just make it one nice function to do it all. I'm going to nuke that. I'm going to get rid of this one too. We already got it from when the scene starts. Get rid of that. I'm going to come down here and destroy weapons, which I've neglected because we've had other things added. So we're going to add in destroying the platform beams and the bombs. And I already, oops. And this, I already have bombs, I just did it alphabetical, so I'm just going to get rid of that because that was a duplicate. There, so now it's right. So it's the same, save that. And the last one is going to be the player controller. So we're going to get rid of the freeze bullet thing, but we're going to call something called freeze everything. Drop that over, and then it's just adding a comment. And then over here, we're going to add in that thing that I took out, where we're going to see if we're in a camera transition or we're in the game is paused. Then if it's not paused and it's not in a transition, then we want to basically run this code here. So we're going to bring that over. This is going to go bye-bye. We don't care about freezing the bullets. So this is, I'm getting rid of that. And down here, I'm going to get rid of this. And then we're going to bring it over F for freeze. So this is going to freeze everything as a test to debug it. Boom. And then last, down here, we're going to, because our destroy delay is defaulted in the explosion script, on our player explode, we want to set it to 5 so it lasts longer. So then we're going to save that. And that should do it for all the changes other than whatever's in the scene. And the game manager prefab, no big deal. So now we're going to come back over here. We're going to run it again. We're going to try that freeze out with the F. So let's see. So that's F. I just pressed F. I can still move around, and it still hurts me. And you can see that Sniper Joe isn't doing anything, so I'm going to press F again. And there. So Bomb's frozen, Sniper Joe's frozen. I'm going to press F. Now he's awake again. He's frozen, just pressed F. And I should probably let's touch it. Alright, that's fine. We're going to start over. So now we're going to do it with the pause. What am I saying? I already did the pause. So the point of this is to make sure that he freezes. And he froze. That might be a place where you're going to put yourself invincible too, but I don't have it like that. So let's stop that and let's check it really out. And I think the difference in the scene was that I actually ended up enabling all these guys. So let us play it again with a whole lot more into it. Kamadomas, we have Sniper Joes, and then I pressed F to freeze and to unfreeze. And there's an explosion that's frozen. However, I'm not. Let's go again. Bullets that are frozen. Kamadoma is frozen, Sniper Joe's frozen. So that kind of gives you both ways that you can accomplish it. You basically give everything a freeze option, or you can use Timescale to freeze everything. But there might be cases where you want to just freeze everything but allow yourself not to be frozen. Maybe you collect something in the game, in your game, and then everything basically time freezes around everything but you. So you can give yourself options like that. So anyway, that brings us to the end. Kind of a short video. It's a lot of code changes. I know it didn't seem like it had much. I wasn't like really prepared to like kind of go through it and everything like that. But what you can do is you can just check out the differences up online. Just go download the project. You can see how I did everything in each of those scripts. You know, we saw on the screen which ones basically were blue. Those are the ones that all had changes in them. So you can go and check out the changes yourself, you know, instead of watching it through the video. Anyway, so that brings us to the end. Next video is going to be on the weapons menu. And that's basically going to actually, I had to do this video first because the weapons menu actually takes pause into account. And when we get to that, you'll see what I'm talking about. So if you found it useful, give it a thumbs up. Always appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed, then subscribe. If you have any questions or anything, then you can join my Discord server. The link's in the description. So I'll catch you at the next video. Goodbye.